one ancient survival mechanism, hidden inside every human mind. Without it, the society you live in probably does not exist. Think about the last time you felt truly bored. Maybe you were sitting in a waiting room with no phone. Maybe you were listening to a long speech that had nothing to do with you. You felt that restless itch in your chest. Your mind started to wander. You tapped your foot. You looked around the room for anything at all to catch your eye. Eventually, you felt like you had to get up and move. You had to do something. Anything. Most of us think of boredom as a nuisance. We think of it as a waste of time. We spend billions of dollars every year just to avoid feeling it for even 10 minutes. But that feeling is actually one of the most powerful tools our species ever developed. It is a psychological alarm. It is a loud, screaming siren that tells your brain one thing: you are wasting your life. It tells you that your current environment has nothing left to offer you. It tells you that you are not learning. It tells you that you are not growing. So it punishes you with a feeling of deep discomfort until you change your situation. But what if that siren just stopped? What if the wires were cut? Imagine a version of a human being who can sit on a rock and stare at a gray wall for 50 years. They are not sad. They are not meditating. They are just perfectly content doing absolutely nothing. They do not feel the itch to move. They do not feel the need to see what is over the next hill. They do not feel the urge to pick up a stick and draw a shape in the dirt. To this person, staring at a blank wall is just as satisfying as discovering fire or building a city. In this world, the human story never really begins. Everything we call progress was born from someone being bored with the way things were. Someone looked at a cave wall and thought it was too plain. Someone looked at the same bushes they had been eating from for a month and felt a restless need to find something new. Without that restlessness, we are a very different kind of animal. We become a species that is trapped in the present moment, not in a peaceful way, but in a stagnant way. This is not just a story about being lazy. It is a story about the death of curiosity. If you never get bored, you never wonder. If you never wonder, you never try. We think of boredom as the enemy of happiness, but in reality, it is the mother of everything we have ever built. If humans lost the capacity for boredom, the world would fall silent. Our ancestors would have stayed in the first valley they ever found. They would have sat by the first stream they ever drank from, and they would have stayed there until the world changed around them. They would never have looked up at the stars and wondered what they were, because wondering requires a mind that is bored with the ground. To understand how this changes the world, we have to go back to the very beginning. We have to look at the moment when the human mind first started to wake up. About 70,000 years ago, our ancestors were living in small groups across East Africa. They were successful, they had tools, they had fire, they had language. But they were also stuck. For thousands of years, they lived in the same places and used the same types of stone hand axes. Their lives were a simple cycle of finding food, eating food, and sleeping. But then, something shifted. Scientists often call it the Great Leap Forward. Suddenly, humans started making art. They started making jewelry. They started building better boats and moving across the ocean. They started to change their tools every few years instead of every few centuries. Why did that happen? There are a lot of theories, but one of the biggest drivers was a simple, painful feeling: restlessness. The feeling that what we have right now is not enough. The feeling of being bored with the same valley and the same tools. Now, imagine that shift never happens. Imagine that same group of humans sitting by a lake 70,000 years ago. They have enough food for the day. They have a safe place to sleep. In our timeline, a young man in that group would eventually look at the horizon. He would feel an itch in his mind. The lake is nice, but he has seen it every day for 20 years. He knows every tree. He knows every rock. His brain begins to starve for something new. That starvation is what we call boredom. It is so uncomfortable that he eventually stands up. He gathers his things. He tells his family that they should see what is on the other side of the mountains. He does this not because he has to, but because he cannot stand to stay. But in this other world, that itch never arrives. This young man sits by the water and looks at the same rock he has looked at since he was a child. And he is perfectly content. He feels no drive to see the other side of the mountain. The mountain is just a shape on the sky. It does not matter to him. He does not feel the need to invent a better way to catch fish. The way he does it now works well enough. Why work hard to change something if you aren't frustrated by the way it is? This is the moment the switch flips off. His mind is quiet. It is a deep, heavy silence that replaces the noise of curiosity. In this world, the Great Leap Forward is canceled. The jewelry is never made because nobody is bored enough to play with shiny stones. The cave paintings never happen because nobody is bored enough to wonder what an animal looks like on a wall. The population stays small, the groups stay in their original valleys. Humans become a species that is technically capable of great things, but has no reason to do them. We become like the sharks or the crocodiles. Animals that found a way to survive and just stopped changing. Except we are worse off. Because a shark is built to be a perfect hunter. A human is built to be a perfect learner. If you take away the drive to learn, you are left with an animal that is physically weak and mentally idle. You have a creature that is satisfied with its own extinction. Because if the climate changes or the food runs out, this version of a human won't feel the restless urge to fix it until it is too late. They will just sit by the drying lake, staring at the same rock, feeling completely fine, until the water is gone. This quiet mind is the end of the human story before it even starts. But the consequences go even deeper than just staying in one place. It changes how we treat each other. It changes how we think about time. And it changes the very reason we have a brain in the first place. If we don't get bored, we don't move. And if we don't move, we die. In our world, humans are travelers. We have always been travelers. We spread from Africa to every corner of the planet in a relatively short amount of time. We crossed deserts. We built rafts to cross oceans. We climbed mountains that were freezing cold. We did not do this because we had to. Often, we did it because we were looking for something better, or just something different. In this new world, that expansion stops immediately. Imagine a group of people living in a valley. This valley has plenty of water. It has enough fruit and small animals to feed everyone. In our history, some members of that group would eventually get restless. They would look at the same trees and the same stream and feel a heavy weight on their mind. They would want to see what was beyond the ridge. But without boredom, that weight never exists. The group stays. They stay for 10 years. They stay for 100 years. They stay for 1,000 years. To them, the valley is not a prison. It is just where they are. There is no internal drive to find a better valley if the current one is working. This has a massive impact on the human map. Instead of humans spreading out across the globe, we would see small, isolated pockets of people. Each group would be like an island. They would stay in their original locations until the environment forced them to move. If a drought happened, they might move, but as soon as they found a new spot with water, they would stop again. There would be no pioneers. There would be no explorers. The concept of the great unknown would not be exciting. It would just be irrelevant. Why go to the unknown when you are perfectly fine right here? Because people are not moving, they are not meeting other people. In our history, groups met each other. They traded ideas, they traded tools, they traded food and clothes. This mixing is what made us strong. It is how we shared inventions like the bow and arrow or the wheel. Without the restless urge to wander, these groups never meet. One tribe might spend 5,000 years using a specific type of spear. Another tribe 50 miles away might spend 5,000 years using a different one. They will never share their designs. They will never compare notes. Each group is trapped in a bubble of its own making. This leads to a biological problem too. When groups stay small and isolated for thousands of years, they stop being a single species. They begin to drift apart. In this world, humans might have evolved into dozens of different subspecies. Each group would be adapted to its tiny valley, but they would be completely different from the group on the other side of the mountain. We think of the world as one big connected place, but in a world without boredom, the world stays huge and fragmented. It stays a collection of tiny, quiet spots. There is no global trade. There is no shared culture. There is only the valley you were born in, and the deep, unwavering feeling that this valley is enough. But staying in one place is only the beginning of the change. Because when you stop moving, you also stop changing how you live. You stop trying to make your work easier. You stop trying to make your life better. If you are not bored with the way you do things, you have no reason to invent anything new. And that is where the real tragedy of this world begins. Innovation is not just about being smart, it is about being frustrated. Almost every tool we have ever created was born from a very specific kind of annoyance. Think about the first wheel. Before the wheel, people had to drag things. They dragged heavy animal skins full of meat. They dragged logs. They dragged stones. It was slow. It was exhausting. It was, quite simply, a tedious and boring way to spend a day. In our world, someone eventually got tired of the repetition. They hated the feeling of doing the same hard task over and over again. That boredom forced them to think. It forced them to find a shortcut. They realized that if they put a log under the heavy load, it rolled. They realized that if they cut a slice of that log, they could make a wheel. The wheel was not just a clever idea. It was a way to escape the boredom of dragging. But in a world without boredom, that inventor never exists. Imagine a man moving a pile of rocks from one side of a field to the other. He carries one rock at a time. He walks back and forth. 1 trip, 2 trips, 100 trips. In our world, by the 10th trip, his brain would be screaming at him. It would be telling him that this is a waste of energy. It would be looking for a way to carry 5 rocks at once. It would be looking for a way to stop doing this as soon as possible. But for the man who cannot feel boredom, the 100th trip feels exactly like the first. He is perfectly calm. He is not looking for a shortcut because he doesn't mind the long way. To him, time has no value. Efficiency is a concept that doesn't make sense. Why would you try to save time if you are perfectly happy spending that time doing exactly what you are doing right now? This is the innovation freeze. In this world, technology stops at good enough. If a sharpened stick can kill a deer, humans will use that same sharpened stick for 1,000,000 years. They will never invent a bow and arrow. A bow is a complex machine. It takes hours of testing. It takes hundreds of failures. You have to find the right wood. You have to find the right string. You only do that work if you are dissatisfied with the stick. You only do it if you are bored with how close you have to get to the deer. If good enough is always perfect, then nothing ever changes. Our history becomes a flat line. We would see stone tools that look exactly the same in the year 10,000 as they did in the year 1. There is no Bronze Age. There is no Iron Age. There is no Industrial Revolution. Because every single one of those eras was started by someone who was bored with the limits of their world. Someone was bored with wood, so they found metal. Someone was bored with horses, so they built an engine. Without that itch, we are a species of masters who never practice. We are geniuses who never think. We would have the same brains we have today, but they would be silent. They would be like a high-powered computer that is only ever used to add 1 + 1. The hardware is there. The potential is massive. But the software is missing the one line of code that says find a better way. This creates a world that is very peaceful, but also very dead. There is no struggle, but there is also no victory. There is no failure, but there is also no discovery. And this lack of drive doesn't just stop us from building tools. It stops us from building anything at all, including the way we live together. If you aren't bored with your own company, you might never feel the need to build a society. If you aren't bored with the way things are, you might never notice that someone else has it better. And that leads to a very strange kind of social stillness, a world where humans live like ghosts in a landscape that never changes. Social interaction isn't just about survival, it is about novelty. We talk to people because we want to know something new. We seek out friends because we want to be entertained. We fall in love because we want to share a life. That feels more exciting than being alone. But without boredom, social curiosity dies. Think about your friends. You probably like them very much. But you also probably like meeting new people from time to time. You want fresh perspectives. You want to hear new jokes. You want to listen to stories you haven't heard before. In this world, that drive is completely gone. You could talk to the same 3 people for 80 years. You would hear the same stories 10,000 times. and you would never feel the need to walk away. You would never feel that familiar urge to check your watch or find a new conversation. This changes how we build power. Most leaders in human history were driven by a type of restlessness. They wanted more influence. They wanted more land. They wanted more control. They were bored with the amount of power they already had. But if you are never bored, you never crave more. Ambition vanishes. Politics becomes a flat line. There are no revolutions in this world. There are no uprisings. A dictator could rule for a century, and no one would ever feel the restless urge to replace them. Not because the people are happy, but because they are not bored enough to care about a change. Status doesn't matter anymore. In our world, we work hard to get better jobs or bigger houses. We want to impress people. We want to feel like we are moving up in the world. We want to escape the mundane parts of life. But in this world, nothing is mundane. Digging a ditch for 40 years is just as socially satisfying as being a king. If no one is bored, no one is looking for a way out of their social class. Society becomes a collection of statues. People are born into a role and they stay there until they die. They don't resent it, they don't love it, they just are. This also means conflict almost disappears. Most wars are started because a group of people feels restricted. They feel like their current borders are too small. They feel like they want what someone else has. That envy is a close cousin of boredom. It is the feeling that what you have right now is not enough. Without that feeling, humans are incredibly peaceful. But it is the peace of a graveyard. There is no growth because there is no friction. There is no art because there is no social struggle. There is no drama. No one writes plays about people who are perfectly content to do exactly what they did yesterday. Human relationships become shallow pools of water that never move. We stay together not because of love or deep connection. We stay together because we have no reason to leave. This social stillness is the final layer of the freeze. First, we stopped moving across the earth. Then, we stopped inventing tools. Now, we have stopped changing who we are to each other. We are a species of billions of people who are all effectively alone. Because when you are never bored with your own thoughts, you never truly need anyone else. But there is one more thing that stops when boredom dies. It is the way we learn. If you are never bored, you might never actually get good at anything. Think about the first time you tried to learn a new skill. Maybe it was riding a bike. Maybe it was playing a guitar. At first, it was exciting. Everything was new and every little bit of progress felt like a victory. But as you got better, that excitement started to fade. Once you can stay balanced on two wheels, just riding in a straight line isn't fun anymore. Once you can play one chord perfectly, playing it 1,000 times feels like a chore. Your brain gets bored with what it already knows how to do. And that boredom is a gift. It is the only reason you ever try something harder. It is the only reason you move from playing a single note to playing a song. In our world, mastery is built on a pile of discarded, boring moments. But in a world without boredom, the learning process hits a wall. Imagine a child picking up a flute for the first time. She learns how to play one single note. She blows into the wood and a clear sound comes out. In our world, she would do this for a few minutes. Then she would get bored. She would want to know what happens if she covers a hole with her finger. She would want to hear a different sound. She would want to make a melody. But in this other world, she plays that one note, and she is satisfied. She feels no need to change her finger position. She feels no urge to hear a new tone. To her, that one note is a miracle every single time she hears it. She could play that same note for her entire life, and she would never feel like she was missing out on the rest of the music. This means that in this world, no one ever becomes an expert. No one ever becomes a master of anything. Because mastery requires you to push past the things you already know how to do. It requires you to be frustrated with your current level of skill. If you are perfectly happy being a beginner, you stay a beginner forever. Think about what that does to a society. There are no doctors. Becoming a doctor requires years of intense, repetitive study. It requires reading thousands of pages of text that are often dry and difficult. In our world, we push through that boredom because we want the reward at the end. We want the status. or the knowledge, or the ability to help people. But in this world, a person would start reading the first page of a medical book. They would find a single fact about the human heart, and they would be content with that one fact. They would never feel the restless need to turn the page. They would never feel the itch to understand how the rest of the body works. They are happy knowing one thing. The same is true for every complex job we have. There are no engineers to build bridges. There are no pilots to fly planes. There are no chefs to create complex meals. Civilization is built on layers of expertise. It is built on people who were so bored with simple things that they went looking for something complicated. Without that drive, we are a species of permanent amateurs. We are people who know how to do the very basics of survival. We know how to find a berry. We know how to drink water from a stream, but we never learn how to farm. We never learn how to purify the water. Because those things require us to be unhappy with the way things are right now. They require us to look at a muddy puddle and think that there has to be a better way. If you are never bored with the mud, you never build the well. This is the learning wall. It is a ceiling that sits just above the most basic level of human existence. We have the brains to reach the stars, but we do not have the internal engine to make us climb. We are perfectly fine sitting at the bottom of the ladder, staring at the same step, forever. In our world, we exercise our minds because we hate the feeling of being idle. We solve puzzles. We learn languages. We read books. We do these things just to kill time. But in doing so, we accidentally become smarter. We become more capable of handling the world. In the world without boredom, time does not need to be killed. Time is a friend that never leaves. So the mind stays weak, the species stays simple, and the wall stays high. This leads us to a terrifying biological trap, because being too content can actually be a death sentence for a species. In the natural world, contentment is a death sentence. Most animals spend their entire lives on the edge of survival. If they find a spot with enough food and water, they stay there. They don't leave until they have to. But humans are different. We leave perfectly good places all the time. We walk away from full trees and clean streams, just to see what is over the next ridge. We call this curiosity or spirit. But biologically, it is just boredom. Boredom is our species' life insurance policy. It is an early warning system that protects us from the future. Think about a lake in a green valley. In this world, without boredom, a group of humans lives by this lake. The water is clear. The fish are easy to catch. These people are perfectly content. They sit by the shore and watch the ripples on the water for 10 hours a day. They don't feel the need to store extra food. They don't feel the need to find a second source of water. They don't feel the need to build stronger shelters. Why would they? They are happy right now. But nature does not care if you are happy. Nature is constantly changing. One year, the rains don't come. The lake begins to shrink. The fish start to die off. In our world, the humans in that valley would have left a long time ago. Not because they knew a drought was coming, but because they got bored with the lake after the first 5 years. They would have wandered off and found a river, or a forest, or a coast. By the time the drought hit the valley, the group would already be spread out in 5 different places. Boredom forced them to diversify their options. It made them future-proof their lives without even knowing it. But in this other world, the people stay. They watch the water get lower and lower. They are still not worried. They are still content with what little is left. They don't have the restless energy required to pack up their lives and walk into the desert to find a new home. They wait, and then they are gone. This is the biological trap. When you remove boredom, you remove the drive to prepare for the what if. Humans are physically very weak compared to other animals. We don't have thick fur to keep us warm. We don't have massive claws to fight off predators. We don't have the speed to outrun a cheetah. Our only real edge is that we are never satisfied. We are the only animal that looks at a warm cave and thinks about how to make it warmer. We are the only animal that looks at a full belly and worries about what we will eat 3 months from now. That worry is fueled by the discomfort of standing still. If we lose that discomfort, We lose our armor. We become a species that is too zen to survive a harsh winter. We become a species that is too at peace to notice the wolf circling the camp. In this world, humanity doesn't just stop progressing. It starts to shrink. Groups of people die out simply because they didn't feel like moving when the environment shifted. They were happy until the very last second. And in the eyes of evolution, that makes them a failure. Evolution doesn't reward happiness. It rewards the person who is nervous enough to keep looking for an advantage. It rewards the person who is bored enough to try something new. Without boredom, we are a biological dead end. We are a brilliant fire that refuses to spread, and eventually, the wood runs out. But what does the world actually look like if these people manage to survive in a stable place? What kind of modern world emerges when no one cares about the clock? Imagine a town that has looked exactly the same for 5,000 years. The houses are made of the same mud bricks, the paths are in the same places, the people wear the same clothes. This is not because they are poor. It is not because someone is forcing them to live this way. It is because no one in the history of this town has ever felt the need to change a single thing. In our world, we look at old photos of our cities and we see how much has changed. We see new buildings. We see different cars. We see fashion that looks strange to us now. We change these things because we get tired of the old ones. We get bored with the shape of our houses. We get bored with the color of our shirts. But in this other world, that feeling does not exist. Let's look at a man named Elias. Elias is 60 years old. Every morning for 50 years, Elias has woken up and walked to the same field. He uses a simple wooden stick to plant seeds. He does this for 12 hours. Then he goes home and eats a bowl of plain grain. Then he sleeps. In our world, we would call this a nightmare. We would say Elias is trapped in a loop. We would pity him for his boring, repetitive life. But Elias is not suffering. He is perfectly happy. When he pushes the stick into the dirt for the millionth time, it feels just as satisfying as the first time. He does not dream of a better job. He does not wish he was on a beach. He does not want to invent a machine to do the planting for him. His mind is full of the present moment. He is a man who has achieved what we call mindfulness without even trying. But it is a mindfulness that has stalled his entire race. Because Elias is never bored, there is no art in his town. There are no stories. Why would you tell a story? Stories are things we use to fill the empty space in our heads. We watch movies because we want to experience something more exciting than our own lives. We read books because we want to travel to places we have never seen. Elias has no empty space to fill. His head is already full of the dirt and the seeds and the grain. So, there is no music here. There are no paintings on the walls. There are no games. The very concept of entertainment does not exist. He eats the same bowl of grain every single day. He has eaten it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for his entire life. In our world, we want variety. We want salt and sugar and spices. We want to try a new restaurant. We want to see what a different culture eats. We do this because our brains get bored with the same flavors. But Elias's brain is always satisfied. The 100th bowl of grain tastes just as good as the first. He has no reason to look for a new recipe. He has no reason to trade with the next town for spices. Trade stops. Travel stops. The world becomes a collection of people who are all staring at their own feet. The idea of a weekend makes no sense in this world. We work all week so we can have a break. We want a break because work is often repetitive and dull. We need fun to balance out the boredom. But if you are never bored, work is fun. Or rather, work is just what you are doing. There is no distinction between a holiday and a workday. Time has lost its teeth. There is no rush to get things done. There is no saving time because time is not something you are trying to escape. This is the snapshot of a world that is stuck. If you walked through this town, you would see people who look incredibly peaceful, but you would also see a world that is incredibly fragile. There is no library. There is no school. Knowledge is not passed down because no one is curious enough to ask questions. Everyone just watches what the person before them did, and they do it exactly the same way. They are like the cells in a body. Each one does its job. No one wonders if there is a better way for the body to function. There is no medicine here beyond what was discovered by accident thousands of years ago. There is no science. Science begins with the words, "I wonder why." But you only wonder why if you are bored with not knowing. If you are perfectly content with the mystery stays. This world is a museum that is still alive. It is a place where time has stopped moving forward. The sun rises and the sun sets. But for humanity, it is always the same day. It is a life of total, unwavering peace. And it is the most boring world you can possibly imagine, except for the people living in it. To them, it is perfect. But this perfection has a long shadow, because while these people are happy, they are also invisible to history. They leave no mark, they build nothing that lasts, and they have lost the one thing that makes us truly human. They have lost the ability to want something more. Think about what 1,000 years looks like in our world. 1,000 years ago, we were using wooden plows and horses to survive. We lived in small villages, and most people never traveled more than 10 miles from where they were born. Today, we have built cities that reach the clouds. We have machines that can think for us. We have sent people to the moon. We have changed almost everything about how we live, eat, and talk. This happened because 1,000 years of humans felt restless. 10,000 generations of people looked at their lives and felt that it wasn't quite enough. They were bored with the slow pace of a horse, so they built a train. They were bored with the dark, so they captured the light. But in the world without boredom, 1,000 years is just a single, long... If you could travel through time in that world, you would be disappointed. You would jump 500 years into the future and find the same people in the same houses. They would be wearing the same clothes. They would be telling the same simple jokes. History as we know it would simply stop existing. Because history is not just a record of time passing. History is a record of people trying to change things. Every war, every invention, every book, and every revolution started with a feeling. The feeling was that the present moment was not sufficient. Without boredom, there are no events to write down. There is only survival. There is only the sunrise and the sunset. This means the future itself disappears as a concept for the human mind. Humans today spend a lot of time thinking about the year 2100. We wonder what the world will look like. We wonder if we will have cured diseases or if we will live on other planets. We do this because we assume that things will be different. But Elias and the people in his world do not think about the future at all. To them, tomorrow is just today, but happening again. They have no hope. That sounds sad, but it isn't to them. Hope is the desire for something to be different than it is right now. If you are always content, you don't need hope. But you also don't have dread. Dread is the fear that the future will be worse than the present. These people live in a permanent now. They are the only animals on Earth that have perfectly synchronized with the rhythm of the planet. They don't fight against time. They don't try to beat the clock. They don't try to save time because they aren't trying to get anywhere else. But this peace comes at a terrible cost. The cost is the human soul. We like to think of the soul as something beautiful and calm. But the part of the human spirit that builds things is actually very dark. It is the part that is never happy. It is the part that complains when the room is too cold. It is the part that gets frustrated when a task takes too long. It is the itch in the back of the brain that says there must be more than this. If you kill that itch, you kill the fire. 1,000 years from now, our world will likely be unrecognizable to us. We might be living inside computers. We might have changed our own biology. But the people who cannot get bored will still be in that same valley. They will still be sitting by that same stream. They will be staring at the same stars and never once wondering what they are made of. They have found a perfect, everlasting peace. But they have lost the stars. They have traded the entire universe for the comfort of a single rock. And they are so content that they will never even realize what they gave up. This is the long shadow of a world without boredom. It is a world where the lights are on, but no one is home. It is a world where humanity is safe, but we are no longer human. Because to be human is to be dissatisfied. To be human is to want to be somewhere else. When we lose our boredom, we lose our way. Boredom is not a bug in your brain. It is a feature. It is a loud alarm that tells you that you are capable of more than what you are doing right now. Without that alarm, we would never have left the caves. We would have been perfectly happy to stay in the dark as long as we had enough to eat. Boredom was the spark that made us look for light. Every great invention in history started with someone being annoyed. Someone was tired of walking, so they tamed a horse. Someone was tired of the dark, so they captured fire. If we were never bored, we would never have built a single tool. Curiosity is just boredom looking for a way out. We explore the world and the stars because we cannot stand the feeling of knowing everything in our own backyard. That restlessness is the only reason our species has survived this long. We often try to escape boredom with our phones and our games, but we should be careful what we wish for. A mind that is never bored is a mind that has stopped growing. It is a mind that is finished. The itch in your brain is actually your greatest gift. It is the engine that keeps you moving forward. It is the reason you ask why things are the way they are. And it is the only reason the future will look different than today. This is a hypothetical scenario based on the historical record. Real outcomes would depend on factors no model can predict.